It's time for Ask Dr. Rick on 590 The Fan KFNS, presented by Bellman Buick GMC. This hour is dedicated to sports medicine, injury prevention, and the issues that are tackled daily with injuries in sports. Now, let's hear from the hosts, Dr. Rick Lehman and Dan McLaughlin of Fox Sports Midwest.
And happy Saturday, everyone. I'm Mark Zinn, filling in for Dan McLaughlin this week, who is on assignment with the Cardinals. This is the Ask Dr. Rick show, brought to you by Bellman Buick GMC, I-270 and McDonald Boulevard. Great selection of cars, great selection of vans, and we'll hear more about those vans a little bit later in the show. But let's bring in now the good doc himself, Dr. Rick Lehman. Hello, Doc.
Hey, how are you doing?
I am doing great. Super Bowl's tomorrow, and that's kind of a big deal. And everyone's out there wants to know, what does the doctor think, or at least who does the doctor think is going to win the Super Bowl?
Well, first of all, if I knew who was going to win the Super Bowl, I wouldn't have to work, and I just bet the Super Bowl and kind of retire. I think you have to look at really the two teams. You have to look at their seasons and how they're playing. And I think the first thing we could all agree on is that both teams are playing by far the best that they played all year. So Baltimore has hit a new level. They seem to really be focused. They are making very few mistakes, very few penalties. They look great. And San Francisco, likewise, especially the second half of the Atlanta game, looked unbeatable. Offense was clicking, finally started to make some stops on defense. And if anything, I would say their defense, the first half, was very, very speculative. The Niners just looked like they really weren't closing on the corners and didn't really look like they were pursuing very well. So I think if you look at the two teams, they're both playing well. I think you have a little bit of a mismatch as it relates to offense and defense. Specifically, I believe that the Niners' defense should be able to dominate Baltimore's offense. Baltimore's offense a little speculative. They're a little slow, just don't have the talent. And if the Niners play well on defense, I think a little bit of a mismatch. The big, most important and kind of interesting part is going to be what's going to happen with the 49ers offense versus Ray Lewis and Baltimore Ravens defense. That's everybody wants to see. Ray Lewis, his last game, no doubt about it. Probably start crying at the end of the game regardless. And everybody wants to see what's going to happen. And I think what's going to happen is I think you're going to see weaknesses in the Baltimore defense. I think Colin Kaepernick brings a whole new level of football with the potential for him to run. His option play, I think, has really been effective. Ran it 0 basically versus Atlanta. He ran the ball one time. And then I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a real effort in terms of the secondary, trying to close down the wide receivers of the Niners. And I just don't know with his passing arm if they're going to be able to do it. So my pick, I think it's going to be the Niners, 6 points.
Now, you are a doctor. Let's talk about Ray Lewis. He just came off that injury. Is that going to affect him here in the Super Bowl?
Well, Ray Lewis tore his triceps, didn't play all year long, and he was activated for the playoffs. So you have a couple things. Number one, the guy hasn't played all year. He's not beat up, so he's not the typical at the 18th game situation. So cardio-wise, fatigue-wise, breakdown-wise, he's had none of that.
Could he overextend himself then? I mean, and maybe even potentially hurt himself further?
Well, he needs to have surgery on his triceps, and he's wearing a big brace. And as we talked about last week, he's a positional player now. He can't really arm tackle the way he used to and can't really hit the way he used to. But if he gets in the right position, he can pretty much stop any play, stopping the plays with his head and his shoulders. And I think he's going to be effective based on that mechanism of playing. So I think Ray Lewis is a phenom. This week there's been a huge story break about Ray Lewis, Vijay Singh, and a number of other athletes who have been taking, believe it or not, deer antler spray pills.
Yeah, tell us a little about that. That's kind of weird. I mean, I was asking you before the show if I should start using it, and you were saying.
Well, I there's no doubt, Mark. I mean, I think we'll get you all cut up and forget it. I mean, between the amazing athlete you'll become and all the women, you'll be changing professions.
Is it a bad thing though in terms of for your health? Obviously, the antlers, as I'm told, they grow back on the deers, and so the extract from the antler itself is what does it improve the bone growth or the muscle growth?
Well, basically, what happens is when you have growth hormone, HGH, human growth hormone breaks down into insulin growth factor 1, just sort of the HCO, water, hydrogen. So it breaks down into growth factor 1, which is the substance that creates muscle hypertrophy or muscle growth. So when you take deer antler spray or deer antler pellets or deer antler velvet, and they're all basically the same, what you're going to get is you're going to get what's called an androgenic effect. You're going to get like a steroid effect or an HGH effect where your muscles are going to get much, much bigger and be hyperstimulated, and it's going to allow you to be much stronger, much faster with much less workout and much better endurance.
Well, why doesn't it show up in the tests then? You talk about the drug test or the screening test for the athletes. Why isn't that showing up on the NFL players' tests?
That is a great question. As you may know or may not know, HGH.
I don't know. Let's go ahead and assume that.
HGH is not tested in the National Football League. It's just recently tested in Major League Baseball, and that was a big coup, and that was a huge step, I think, for Major League Baseball. So HGH, human growth hormone, has never been tested before. And the tests have always been very difficult because your body makes a certain amount of HGH. So it's always been hard to tell, is that just a normal variant? Do you make more than I make? So how is the test going to determine what your baseline is, what's your HGH, and what's synthetic HGH? So just recently, it's believed that the tests are sophisticated enough to make that differentiation. Now, if you take it one step further, you're not testing HGH, you're testing the breakdown product of HGH, which is the real stuff that goes to the muscle. So even if you tested for HGH, you could take all the antler spray you wanted, you could take anything with IGF-1 you wanted, and you would test negative. So all these years that these guys have been doing this, and it's a lot of guys and it's a lot of years, and it's a commonly known androgenic supplement, PED, performance-enhancing drug.
In all sports, or just NFL, or all sports?
Well, golf, huge in golf, huge in the NFL, and I believe that many sports have athletes that have abused the IGF-1, but I think you see it in guys at the gym who are just regular, Mark Zinns and Rick Lehmans, and they're out there lifting, and they know they want to get a little pop, so stuff's inexpensive. You can get it at any store. You don't need a prescription, so it's an easy, cheap way to get an androgenic effect, and I think it was filtered down to the general population. I think a lot of people have given it a go, so I think it's out there.
I mean, if it's a banned substance, but it's hard to enforce, so why is it still a banned substance, I guess I should say? Or how do you enforce it? Is there a way that you by a blood test or something, that you could actually figure out if these people are using the deer antler spray?
The answer is no. And the reason is you'd have to basically set up a separate test for this IGF-1. And the deer antler spray out there has all kinds of different composites to it. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to figure out a way to test for all the different breakdown products of the deer antler spray. So that's the first problem. The second problem is as soon as you perfect this test, someone's going to change one or two of the components, and then the test isn't going to be positive anymore. And that's really how guys got around anabolic steroid testing, is they would get a different side chain, a little bit of a boutique testosterone type of a drug. They'd change it just a little bit, the test would be negative, and they would be getting the same effect.
Very interesting. That's Dr. Rick Lehman. This is the Ask Dr. Rick show. You can follow him on Facebook, facebook.com/Dr. Rick Lehman. That's DrRickLehman. And that's the same account for his Twitter handle, Dr. Rick Lehman. And you can use the hashtag as well, Ask Dr. Rick. We'll be right back here on 590 The Fan, KFNS, and KFNS.com.